News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Randy, helping you to retire that job but keep that paycheck. I'm your host, Doug Ray. And of course, with me this morning is Mr. Brice Payne. Good morning, Brice. How are you?
Good morning, Doug. Well, I'm just coming back from a trip at Beaufort, so I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Beaufort's a great.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Sure.
Beaufort and Buford.
No, I haven't been to Buford, but I love Beaufort. So hi to all the people out there. Once again, another beautiful trip. Doug, how's your new grandbaby doing, Harrison?
Oh, my gosh. He's growing by leaps and bounds just about it.
Already? So, yeah, he's making eye contact with you yet?
Started to.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, he'll be another advisor here with the Wealth Guardians within a few years, I'm sure.
Decades from now.
Maybe we'll see. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do the things that we always do here first thing. Doug, take the honors for the Wealth Guardian Service salute, if you would.
Absolutely. We always try to salute our veteran service members, first responders on this radio show, because we just want to thank you for your service, because it is a sacrifice, not just for you, but your families. And we know that and appreciate you from the bottom of our heart.
You know, Doug, one of the things that always makes me well up a little bit with a tear is when I see videos of service men, or usually men, but might be women too, coming back to their families after a long stint, and the kids and the dogs and all that. That really chokes me up. I thought
the emotional time, it sure.
I love to see that. Nice.
Coming back from Iceland and climbing out of the airplane, I had a beard at that time, and my wife didn't even recognize.
That's all right. She went to go hug somebody else, huh? All right. Well, so again, yes, thank you to the responders out there, the men and women in uniform, and your families. They need some recognition as well, because you guys are just making as much of a sacrifice as the servicemen and the family. So thank you as well. All right, Doug. So you know what we do here at the beginning of every show after the service salute is we take a minute and we answer a question so that people out there have a better opportunity to understand who we are at the Wealth Guardians and recognize that we're just not radio personalities or YouTube personalities, but we're people just like them. So here's the question I'm going to ask you, Doug. You'll ask me the same question, and we might as well ask everybody else out there the same question as well. Doug, it's a weekend. It's a rainy day. You had some plans, maybe those plans are canceled because of the rain. What is your go-to activity on a rainy day? What's your backup plan?
Flat. As is our favorite answer on this radio program, it depends.
All right. The time of year, maybe?
It does. I mean, you know, I could sit back and watch some kind of, it's football season, definitely football, golf, something like that.
Something that has a ball in it.
Something that has a ball. I could read a book. You know, I could work on some work at home or whatever. So it's a lot of different stuff.
Okay.
You know, I don't have many hobbies other than golf. I'm not I'll make model airplanes or anything anymore.
What's your go-to kind of read?
Oh, golly. You know, I like the techno fiction and like the Clancy books.
Oh, yeah.
But I like pretty much anything.
Okay. All right. Well, if we were to ask me, what is your go-to plan, Brice, on a weekend? It's raining. Can't do what I wanted to do. I will either crack open a cookbook or sit down and watch some videos on YouTube, figure out what it is I want to cook. I'll watch it a few times or write down the basics of it and then wing it from there and create a meal. But I always like to do something I've never made before. If I've already made it before, I don't enjoy that as much as going to something completely new. So that's what I'll do. I'll just run by the grocery store, pick up what I need to pick up, and cook something new for the first time.
I thought you were going to say listen to Jimmy Buffett.
Well, that's in the background. I'm doing that in the background. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started on our show here. The first thing that we're going to talk about in the first segment is rolling over a 401k, the pros and the cons. Doug, sometimes to this day, I've been doing this for 15 years. You've been doing it longer than me. Sometimes it surprises me that people really don't understand the basics of what a rollover is, why you would consider a rollover, and not just leave the monies where they're at. So I thought, let's spend the first segment here talking about the basics of a rollover, the pros and cons of it. And then in our second segment, we're going to talk about a list of questions you should consider during difficult markets. So let's get started on this, Doug. Let's start by first tackling what is a rollover.
Well, a rollover is simply when you terminate your work, or when you turn 59 and a half, you have the option of taking your 401k, 403b, and rolling it over to your own personal IRA. And it has a number of positives to it. I think the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, we'll get to the pros and cons of it here in just a minute. But like you said, an employer-sponsored plan, a rollover, is bringing it over to an IRA. Now, sometimes there are employer-sponsored plans that are after-tax plans, Roth 401ks. You would roll those generally over to a Roth. It's a non-taxable event when you do that, assuming you do it the right way, but that's what a rollover is. It's a non-taxable event. So you're just bringing an employer-sponsored plan over to an IRA or a Roth. That's what a rollover is. And you kind of mentioned here, who's eligible for that? When is the time that you would do a rollover?
Well, when you're still employed, you can do the 59 and a half rollover.
Right.
And of course, obviously, when you terminate service and retire, you can do the rollover then.
That's the main one everyone knows. Okay, once I leave my company, okay, I can roll it over. But what a lot of people think is probably the thing that makes most sense is I'll just roll it over to my new 401k wherever I'm starting that job.
Well, that's an option.
It's an option most of the time, but it's generally not the sensible option. Correct. Because we look at it when you can move your 401k to an IRA, we call it you're removing the handcuffs, because there's a lot of restrictions on a 401k that do not exist in an IRA. And that's starting to get into the pros and cons of it. But if you just roll it over to your new 401k, what you've done is you've kept the handcuffs on it unnecessarily. Now, there might be a few reasons that you would want to do that, but they're kind of rare reasons. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. But so there's two ways that you could, two times that you could do that. If you left your company, okay, you're no longer bound to that 401k plan. You could roll it over to an IRA then. And the one that a lot of people don't know is kind of a newer rule. It's been around for about, 15 years or so? 20 years? Yeah. And it's called an in-service rollover. So a lot of people have never heard of this. And that's kind of part of the reason that I want to do this on this show, is just to enlighten everybody that there is something out there called an in-service rollover. And what that is that you could still be working for your employer, but once you've turned 59 and a half, under most plans, this is not required by the government. The government highly encourages your 401k plan to allow this rule, is once you've turned 59 and a half, you are allowed to do what is called an in-service rollover. You're still working with your employer, but now the handcuffs are off. If you want them, you can roll it over to an IRA in that situation. It does not close out your current 401k. You're still making contributions to it. All you've done is take the current balance, the current vested balance, and rolled it over to an IRA at that time. So a lot of people, I didn't know that, Brice. I thought that I had to leave my employer or retire before I could do this. No, that's not true in most cases. If you are 59 and a half, you can do what's called an in-service rollover. Those are the two ways that you could do it. Now, Doug, let's talk about the pros and the trade-offs of doing this. There's a lot of pros to rolling over 401k to an IRA. What are some of those pros?
Well, obviously, in your 401k and 403bs, you have a limited number of investments.
Yes, that's the big one, right?
This is the big one. I mean, you could roll over to an IRA, and then you've got a whole world of investments that you can invest in that IRA, to include gold and silver.
Real estate. Options.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most of those in most 401ks, your investment options are mutual funds and maybe company stock. And that's about it. That's your choices. And Doug, the mutual funds out there, there's hundreds of thousands of mutual funds out there. Your 401k plan probably has 20 or so.
Right.
And most of the time, they are not cream of the crop mutual funds. We can get into the reasons of that why, but that is true. You're not going to find the top of the line mutual funds, the best performing or the lowest cost mutual funds out there. Your 401k is going to kind of have some, ones that have not everybody's thrilled about. That's why T. Rowe Price or Vanguard is allowing them to be in the 401k plan. It's because they're trying to encourage more people to invest in those particular mutual funds. So that's one reason. Another pro would be consolidation. Always easier to keep an eye on your accounts if there as much of them are in one place as possible. So if you've got a non-qualified account and a Roth account somewhere and maybe an IRA somewhere and they're all at some brokerage house, hey, you roll over your 401k there. Now it's all the much easier for you to keep an eye on it. Plus, if you have an advisor who's managing those accounts, better to have that manager be aware of all the other investments that you have instead of him trying to guess what's in your 401k. So that's a reason there. Another is active management. Your 401k, generally, you have to be the one that's actively managing your 401k. In most cases, there's not going to be an advisor there who is moving your accounts around for you based on what the markets are doing and whatnot. It's more of a passive management approach in 401ks. So if you want to see your account being more actively managed, that's going to better happen in an IRA, right?
Exactly. One of the things I've seen over the years is companies don't really provide their employees with a breadth of knowledge about their 401k. Maybe they might bring in somebody from Fidelity or T. Rowe Price once a year, but that's really not enough.
And if you call up, you say you've got a question about it, which of these mutual funds should I be in? That person is probably not the same person you talked to on the phone last time, and they don't know your details. They don't know when you're planning on retiring, or if you have a mortgage, or if you have pension options, or what your Social Security is going to be. That's something an advisor needs to know before they start telling you, here's the investments that make sense for you, right? And then the trade-offs, Doug. There's a couple of trade-offs here. Just want to make sure that we're being fair. In a 401k, you're allowed in most cases to take a loan out to yourself. All right. And then you pay it back, and then you pay yourself back the interest. If you have rolled over all of your 401k to an IRA, IRAs don't allow you to do that. So if you are somebody who thinks, yeah, you know what, I'm going to want to take out a loan from my 401k to do some home improvements, you won't be able to do that if you've rolled it all over to an IRA. So keep that in mind. Then there's the age 55 rule.
And this is important.
This, again, not on a lot of people's radars. Tell us what that is.
Well, basically, while you're employed, if you want to take some money out of your 401k, even if you're not employed, let's say you retire.
Yeah.
And you want to take some money out of your 401k, you can actually take it out at age 55 versus 59 and a half without the early distribution penalty. If you roll it to that IRA, you're going to wait till 59.
Right. So if you're looking to retire a little bit early and you thought, well, I'm going to just roll over everything to my IRA. Well, now you can't touch it until 59 and a half. But whatever you left in your 401k, that amount you can touch once you're 55. So it's kind of a gap there between 55 and 59 that allows you to touch a little bit more. The other, and this is a very rare circumstance, but the other benefit for keeping your money in a 401k is that is shielded from creditors. If some creditor out there is trying to get their hands on what they think you owe them, they can touch it if it's in an IRA, and the court fines for them. They can't touch it if it's still in a 401k. But I don't find very many people are in that circumstance.
Really, it's not. It's a handful. It might be, say, doctors who may be subject to malpractice.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, we've got to go ahead and take a break here. Let's get to this trivia question. Doug, are you ready?
Yep.
On June 11th, 1979, this actor passed away after a legendary career. Here are some of his films, and I'm not going to mention his more famous films, or it'd be too easy for you. Sands of Iwo Jima, Rio Lobo, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Longest Day, Donovan's Reef, Hellfighters, The Searchers. Who was this legendary actor who starred in those films and passed away on June 11th, 1979?
If I got it.
All right. Stick around for the answer. Let's see if Doug really did get that on the other side of this break. This is Brice Payne. With me is Doug Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. News Talk 94.5 WPTI. 96.7 FM, WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we continue to help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio, along with Doug Ray this morning. In this second segment, we're going to discuss the list of questions you should consider during difficult markets. Now, before we answer the trivia question that we left you hanging with, let me ask you this. Are you planning to retire? Probably, right? Have you met with a retirement income certified professional who's also a fiduciary? If you have not, then here it is. I'm officially inviting you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. As certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So here it is. If you put aside at least $400,000 and you want to take us up on this no cost, no obligation review, give us a call, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409, or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right, let's go ahead and get to this trivia question here. Doug, it was on June 11th, 1979. This actor passed away after a pretty legendary career. I'm going to list off some of the films here. He was in a lot of them, but if I listed some of the more famous films, this would be an easy giveaway. So he was in some, I don't want to say lesser known films, but ones that might be under some of our radars. Sands of Iwo Jima, Rio Lobo, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Longest Day, Donovan's Wreath, Hellfighters, and The Searchers. Now, before we went to break, you said, okay, I think I got this. Which of those movies was it that was a clue for you? Oh, you knew them all. Okay. Well, here we go. Doug, who is this legendary actor that passed away on June 11th, 1979?
It's got to be the Duke, right?
There you go. John Wayne. John, I remember when he passed away. Jimmy Buffett even wrote a song about John Wayne passing away, if you believe it. Some of his more famous films, True Grit, Liberty Valance, Rio Bravo, Fort Apache. He actually won an actor for True Grit. Rooster Cogburn, that was his character's name. Mm-hmm. Did you know this? Did you know that Stalin had ordered the assassination of John Wayne because John Wayne was so popular and so masculine? Even in Russia, people liked him, and he was adamant against communism.
I had no idea.
So Stalin had ordered his assassination, and the rumor is that John Wayne actually thwarted it. There's no way to back that up, but that is kind of the nice story that's out there that told. And then I believe it was Khrushchev, Nikita, who actually called John Wayne supposedly and said, "I'm calling off that hit. You're an okay guy." So you can't back all that stuff up, but that is the story anyway. So yeah, there you go. All right, so let's talk here in the second segment, a list of questions that you should consider during difficult markets. Doug, we have been spoiled largely over the last 20 years or so, 15 years, of having just a steady run of positive year in and year out. There have been some fluctuations throughout a couple of those years. The COVID crash was one of them. I think 2023 was a little bit volatile. But by and large, we've been through a smoother market over the last 15, 20 years than we normally are. And what happens when what is the result of that happening? People tend to
they get large, and
they think nothing bad can possibly happen in the market. Right. We've seen it happen time and time again.
It's up every day, every week.
Right. So what do we want to do in this segment? We just kind of want to go through a list of questions that maybe you would want to ask yourself in preparation of difficult markets. And the first one here is, Doug, am I taking the right types of risks? How do I know? That's a good question to ask.
It is a good question.
And you know what? We don't want to ask that when it's a difficult market. We want to ask that question before it's a difficult market. Probably the best time to ask that is when you're a couple of years into a good market. And what would be the point of asking that question, Doug? Am I taking the right types of risk?
Well, it's like what we do with our clients, or our new clients that are coming in. We try to balance their risk tolerance with the risk in their portfolio. And a lot of times most of the times what we see is folks are a lot less risk tolerant than what their portfolios are structured.
Right.
So it's very important to align the two. Otherwise, if you get into a really bad market, you're going to have a tough time sleeping at night. And, I have to say this. Yes, since 2008, we've had typically an uptrending market. But since 22, we've had kind of ups and downs quite a bit. The market bottomed out in October of 22, went on a tear thanks to AI stocks. And then it's been very volatile since Trump was elected because of the tariff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep. In fact, we haven't gotten back to previous highs. I think we will eventually, but it's been a volatile time.
Yeah, absolutely. the question here is, how do I know that I'm taking the right types of risk? Well, here's how you'd know. You'd sit down with a holistic financial planner that's a fiduciary and let them analyze your portfolio and compare that to the types of risks you feel comfortable taking or that might be detrimental to your retirement. That's how you know. We are holistic financial planners. We are fiduciaries. We are retirement income certified professionals. And if you want to sit down with somebody who can tell you whether or not you're taking the right kinds of risk on your portfolio and what the consequences might be if you're taking too much risk or too little risk, pick up the phone, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Doug, we go through a 4-meeting process with people to help them understand what a holistic financial planner, the services that we provide, and how that might be able to improve and enhance their retirement picture. No cost or no obligation to sit down with us other than your gas and time to get to our office. All right, let's go to the next one. The next question that you might want to ask is, if the bear market ends tomorrow, will I be positioned to benefit?
Good question.
It is a good question. So if the bear market ends tomorrow, so this question is now, we're in a bear market. How do you know how to position yourself as the bear market is coming to an end, Doug?
Well, the thing that we do here in our office is we have a program that basically systematically gets you out of the market as the bear market goes forth, and then systematically gets you back into the market as the market starts to rise again.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you're positioned properly really would require us to take a look at your situation and see what you've got. Most people go by the old traditional buy and hold method.
Right.
Which, if you're young enough, is fine.
That's right.
Because you're adding money to that portfolio as the market drops.
While it's on sale.
It's called dollar cost average.
That's right. That's right. Works completely different once you've entered the wealth distribution phase of life. The math completely reverts itself. Now you're taking assets from your portfolio. It's great to contribute to your portfolio when the market is down. It's horrible to take distributions from your portfolio when the market is down. That could really be detrimental to your retirement. All right. And the last question that maybe we want to ask is, has anyone else been looking at what am I doing? Am I the only one that feels this way? Yes, that's a great question to ask yourself, because the answer probably out there is no. If you're feeling a certain way about the markets, probably a lot of other people are too, right?
Exactly. If there's a lot of do-it-yourselfers out there that basically plug stuff into their portfolio based on whatever methodology you use. But you got to remember, a lot of times the bear markets last for a long time. I'll never forget when I first got into the business and I was listening to the old-time brokers talk about the 70s. The 70s was a decade that started to foul off at I think it was 600 and it ended at 600, and it had 50% downturns along the way. And those guys are telling me it felt the whole 10-year period like I was living in purgatory.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter's time period there. You got it. So, Doug, I just want to point out real quick while we've got a few seconds left, this is where the amateur investors start taking action. And what they do is, after the market has dropped for a while, now they pull their assets out. They don't want to drop anymore. And that's pretty much the time when the market starts to turn around and come back up. And those amateur investors have sat in the market while the market's gone down, and now they're sitting on the sidelines until they feel confident again. What's it going to take to get them to feel confident? Once the market gets up to the previous high, now they feel comfortable again. And what did they do? They locked in their losses and they sat on the sideline during the rebound. That's the worst thing that you can do, but it's incredibly common for people to do that. If you have a holistic financial planner, a good advisor on your side, they're going to talk you off that ledge and help you realize what the staying in there could mean for you. That's going to be it. Doug, we are out of time for this set. Sometimes we just go right up to the bell here, don't we? Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have this week. I do want to thank you for joining us. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne along with Doug Ray, the show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And I want to remind you, sound financial plans, they're not going to create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.
Hi, it's Garrett Ray with The Wealth Guardians. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to check out our weekly series, The Vault, on YouTube. Find our channel, The Wealth Guardians, where we talk about all things retirement planning and cover new topics each week, such as Social Security, tax planning in retirement, and our thoughts on investment best practices, and much more. New episodes air Thursdays at 2 p.m. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we release new episodes. We're here to help you retire the job and keep that paycheck. We'll talk soon.